When it comes to Quant, what are they doing? So apparently they just completed their first day at an event in Amsterdam, Netherlands. And I'll talk about this in today's video, even though nothing I say is financial advice and even though I am not telling anyone to do anything. So fresh off launching the mainnet of Fusion Rollup, Quant, they're like, you know what, that's not enough, because again, they just said they completed their first day at an event in Amsterdam, Netherlands called Money 2020. And this was actually, to my understanding, held at the RAI Amsterdam, which is supposedly a major convention center. And again, they just completed their first day there. And in the second day, they're going to be at Hall 5, their location at stand 5E10. However, with this being said, people like to say, well, this event is a waste of resources. They like to say that. They say, why even bother having Quant go there, right? They say, oh, having some team members there, it's going to cost a plane ticket, or plane tickets, I should say, plural, you know, hotel fees and all this, transportation, whatnot, right? People like to say this is kind of a waste, but I disagree, because if we consider this event, it's pretty unique, it's pretty massive, and it's pretty famous. It's a good chance to actually interact with other individuals out there, maybe within this space. It's actually also a good time for maybe some people out there to hypothetically ask about Quant, right? Ask about the Overledger OS, ask about the Overledger network, ask about Fusion Rollup. There's a lot of things. So this is a great chance, I think, for Quant to really kind of showcase what they're all about. Now, is every single person out there going to be curious about Quant? No, not really. I mean, we're not talking about Bitcoin or Ethereum here, but I'm saying still, this is not that bad in my opinion. And I think it's actually a genius thing, because by putting themselves out there, who knows, an executive of a top enterprise or maybe an executive at a Fortune 500 company is strolling, you know, that event. They're looking and they're saying, oh, wow, what's Quant? And who knows, maybe they work on a partnership behind the scenes. We just don't know. It's like, for instance, you know, those car conventions? Something like that. But when it comes to this, it's a little bit different, right? This one's not focused on cars. That's the thing. However, even besides that point, again, they just completed their first day. And on the second day, they're still going to be at the RAI Amsterdam, a major convention center, at Hall 5, stand 5E10. So yeah, it's pretty cool, in my opinion. And they're going to be doing it from June 2nd to June 4th. So yeah, pretty awesome, at least in my perspective. And of course, I'm talking about those dates in terms of Amsterdam, right? In terms of the Netherlands in Amsterdam. And actually, some of my aunties and uncles, they do live in Amsterdam. So this is pretty cool. When I take a look at, let's say in the case of Quant, people like to say, oh, you know, who really cares? It's still below $80. But we have to consider the mainnet launch of Fusion Rollup. That was so massive, and that kind of created this initial sort of bump, right? But of course, now there's a slight kind of decrease a little bit, but it's kind of expected. You know, the market isn't doing the best as of right now. So what? Quant is randomly going to go on an independent rally of its own just to like over $200 or something. It typically doesn't work like that, because if Bitcoin's not doing the best, if the altcoin space isn't doing the best, this typically can't just randomly go on like a random 10,000% rally or whatever. You know, I'm just making up a random number, but that's just seemingly not realistic. And if we consider Bitcoin's down, Ethereum's down, Quant is also down. Quant is not the only one going down, relatively speaking, comparatively to where it once was in 2025 and 2024. So that's the thing. It's not like Quant's the only one. If Quant's the only one, maybe it's a little bit alarming, but that's not the case. I just want to talk about the rarity of Quant. However, sometimes people like to say, but being rare is so subjective. I understand that, but we just have to consider this, and I'm just saying this just for some food for thought, right? So the maximum supply of Quant is around 14.8 million. Now, people like to say, oh, but that's kind of a lot, but sometimes people ignore that the maximum supply of Bitcoin is 21 million. So even if for whatever reason 5 million Bitcoin was minused from the maximum supply, so let's say 16 million, that isn't even the maximum supply of Quant. It would actually still be over a million more. Now, people like to say this, well, a lot of Bitcoin is hypothetically lost. Now, that is true, though, because I have read up online that, you know, around 3 to 4 million, depending on where you look at it, they argue that around 3 to 4 million Bitcoin is lost. They like to say that. Okay, so let's just assume that we minus the best case scenario, right? Okay, let's minus 4 million from the maximum supply when it comes to Bitcoin. So let's say for whatever reason, the new maximum supply is 17 million. But again, that's still even over 2 million more than the maximum supply when it comes to Quant. Now, being rare isn't the end-all be-all. It doesn't mean that because Quant is more rare, it's going to overtake Bitcoin. No, it doesn't mean that. But what it does showcase is just how relatively rare Quant is when compared to Bitcoin. If we take a look at it purely from a mathematical standpoint of view, right? Now, granted, people like to say, but yeah, if the demand isn't that good, what's the point of being rare? Okay, I understand that, but I'm just saying still, around 14.8 million is a lot lower than 21 million. That's just my mindset. And again, it's not discrediting Bitcoin. That isn't the case whatsoever, but I'm just saying though, that is the maximum supply when it comes to Quant. So sometimes people just don't really think about that. Even though in my previous video I talked about the magnitude of the mainnet launch of Fusion Rollup, I think we have to again sometimes consider that when it comes to Fusion Rollup, it's allegedly the world's first multi-ledger rollup purpose-built for institutions operating across multiple blockchains at once. So there's a very heavy emphasis there towards interoperability. And if we take a look at it, it's basically focused on, connecting blockchains together, arguably. So if I take a look at Quant, people like to say, oh, it's game over and all this. I just kind of disagree with that. And also surprisingly, even though Quant is down, what I find very kind of shocking about this is that it actually hasn't had too much of a pullback. Like for instance, other projects out there, they're down like 95% or 80% or whatever from where they once were like last year or maybe the year before. But if we take a look at Quant, it's actually not like so bad, I suppose, because if we consider Quant back in December of 2024, it was around $140. So we're basically just half of that as of right now. Like, okay, that's not good still, but it's not so bad considering that a lot of other projects out there are down like 80, 90, 95% from back in December of 2024. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the dip, I like that. Like it is pretty cool and pretty interesting because I can dollar cost average hypothetically at a lower point, so I don't mind. But just to give some food for thought, could you imagine that when it comes to Cardano's native token called ADA, keep in mind, ADA is ranked 13th in the world as of right now in terms of market cap. ADA is now back at levels in which we once saw in early 2021. So we're seeing like early 2021 levels when it comes to Cardano's native token called ADA, but in 2026. So could you imagine that? When it comes to Quant, it hasn't had that much of a pullback, but I'm saying still, it could be viewed as a good or a bad thing, but Quant has held up actually kind of okay when compared to some of the other bigger projects out there, which is pretty interesting because people oftentimes like to overlook Quant, but sometimes they don't consider the actual use case. And sometimes a good use case and good fundamentals can help a project hold up a little bit better. It doesn't mean that it's going to be immune to the pullback. No, it's not immune to a bear market, but at the same time, it can hold up sometimes a little bit better because the fundamentals are actually there. If we take a look at Quant, not only does it have a partnership with Oracle, but also at the same time, the Quant network in and of itself, the use case is a pretty solid one. It's made up of the Overledger OS and the Overledger network. Again, the Quant network is made up of that. And the Overledger OS is something that is very special in my opinion because it allows a multi-chain application to be built. Let's just let this sink in for a little bit, right? Imagine through the Overledger OS, I can build an application that takes advantage of the speed of the Stellar blockchain while at the same time taking advantage of the security of the Bitcoin blockchain. That's what could hypothetically be done through the Overledger OS. It allows, again, a multi-chain application to be built. An application that is built on top of multiple blockchains, not just one, multiple blockchains. That's pretty interesting. So I think that good use case right there in and of itself could have helped, Quant kind of stabilize at a much, I guess, better point. So when it comes to Quant as of right now, I'm still waiting, still holding, but that's pretty much about it. But I'm not telling anyone to do anything. However, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it.